Okay, name is Bob Carrolls. I guess the most interesting thing, or the most fun thing I did was back in 1960. I had tried a little college, didn't like it. It didn't like me. Worked for a little bit, saved some money, bought a bicycle, a British bike, and a ticket on the French line, ocean liner, and sailed from New York to Le Havre in France. It was probably 4 or 5 days. And I got off the boat, got my bike, loaded it up, and started riding. Rode across France, through Paris, camping or staying in youth hostels. Got to Avignon, where the pont is, where the bridge is. I had to stop there because my bicycle tires were in shreds. And it was an English bike, and I couldn't find tires in metric French. So I stayed there for a day or two, and then got on the train with the bike, and took the train to Marseille. I stayed in a youth hostel outside the city, nice up on the hill, looked down all over to the bay. Shipped the bicycle up to my dad, while I was on the road. He had been stationed in Frankfurt, Germany, the Air Force. And so I shipped the bike up to him and bought a Vespa motor scooter in Marseille. Took me about 3 or 4 days just to get it bought and licensed and insured. One of these countries where they take a break in the middle of the day. So say from 1 o'clock till 2:30, 3 o'clock, everything shuts down. I go to an office to get some papers, and they say, oh, but you need a signature from across town at this office. I have to go over there, get the signature, you come back, it's 2 o'clock, and you gotta sit and wait until they come back to work. We finally got it. And I rode the bike, or the scooter, along the coast down to Rome, camping, stopping along the way. Got to Rome in 1960 in the summer, just as the Summer Olympics were starting. Found a campground outside of town. Went in, I usually stopped at a large city and went to American Express to check mail. You could get mail forwarded to American Express office. And at the same place, there'd be people outside selling tickets for Olympic events. And I managed to pick up a number of tickets at reasonable prices. So I'd spend the day going from one of the venues to another. I managed to get tickets for the track and field day one day, and the ticket was right on the finish line when Wilma Rudolph won the gold medal. Went to a number of basketball games. They were fun. More track and field, some of the other events. When the Olympics were over, or when I finished up, got on the scooter again and headed north along the east coast of Italy, up into Austria. Going across before the mountains, I managed to put the scooter on its side and slid into a big granite road marker. Bent the front of the scooter all the way back so it was about so far from the seat. Off-duty mountain trooper came by with a pickup truck, and he helped me put it in the back, took me to the local hospital to patch up a few scratches. What am I going to do now, I say to myself? Well, not much. I'll have to go see if it runs. It did. So the rest of the way, over the high passes, I rode on the back seat of the scooter. So up through the Alps, up over the mountains, down the passes. They had a strange way of doing things. You're coming down these switchbacks off the mountain, down, turn around. The corners where you really want to have nice traction, they were cobblestones, which if they're wet are really slippery. But I got off the mountains, hit the Autobahn, drove on the Autobahn up to Frankfurt, and this is probably getting into September. Stayed with my folks. They had what they call a private rental house that they rented out on the economy. And I stayed there with them over the winter. I got a job on base at the Class 6 store, which is a liquor store, Air Force liquor store. I spent the winter working there. Come around Christmas time, I was opening a case of Johnny Walker, and there was a packing slip inside with a note from the person who had packed it. So just for the heck of it, I sent her a Christmas card. In the spring, I packed up again, got on the scooter, and headed north out of Germany, up into Scandinavia, Denmark, across to Norway, up the coast of Norway, about as far north as Trondheim, crossed over to Sweden, which was also fun because Norway, they drove on the right, same way we do. Yeah. In Sweden, they drove on the left. You got to the border and the road went like that. Sweden's gotten smart, they've gone to the right now. Back down through Sweden, mostly traveling. Stay in the cities long enough to check the mail and stuff, but mostly just driving, seeing the countryside. Down through Sweden, back down through Denmark, into Germany, a little bit in Holland. It was really rainy, so I didn't stay there very long. Interesting thing, the highway police in Holland were driving Porsche convertibles with a pole with a blue light on top. Into Belgium. To cross over to England. My dad had a Air Force friend who lived outside of London. I stayed with them for a few days, probably a week or so. They had a Danish au pair because they had a couple of young kids. And so Hannah and I would hop on the scooter and go into London and see the sights. And I do take trips out to the countryside, went down to the coast, to Brighton Beach, out to Stonehenge. Then when I took off again, went across to Holyhead, I think it is, crossed over to Ireland, around Ireland, got to the top, crossed over to Scotland, drove up through Scotland, drove around Loch Ness. I had been camping with an old 5 and dime type pseudo-army pup tent, very heavy, and it leaked. And in the Scotland weather is wet. So I bought a nice tent from there. Major camping. But as I've been driving along in Scotland, I've been listening to the BBC broadcasting from Edinburgh, where they have a music festival every year. So instead of going all the way to the tip of Scotland that I had originally planned, I sort of cut cross country to Edinburgh, stayed there for about close to 3 weeks in the campground. Went to the various events, saw an opera, saw some Shakespeare, wandered around town. When I'm through there, headed back south, down the center through Canterbury, crossed over to France, headed down through France through what they call the Cognac country, into Spain. I was going to go around Spain, but now it was September already, and things were closing down. Campgrounds were closing, and at the time, there was only one gas company in Spain, and that was Firestone. And the little Vespa wouldn't run on it. It would stall going downhill. I took it to the shops and they couldn't do anything about it. So between that and everything closing down for the winter, I turned around, got back into Spain, or into France, got some Esso in it, and it ran fine. So that's it. I've been a long way on the road. So I headed out straight north to Frankfurt. It took me 3 days, about 13 hours of riding a day. Stayed about a week or so with my folks. They now moved into quarters on post. And then headed back to the States. But that was fun. No itinerary, nothing. Just get on the road, take off as far as you can go. Stop at the markets in the morning, pick up some food, buy a big loaf of French bread and some Swiss chocolate. Buy the bread, buy the chocolate. It'll keep you going. Go in and ask for milk. In France, that was fun because the first summer you couldn't really get anything but blue milk. Blue milk, yes. Well, see, they didn't pasteurize it or homogenize it. They boiled it. The second year, they got an upscale a little bit, and now you can go and get it, what they call a triangle. It was basically looked like a pyramid shape of carton of milk. It was great, packed nicely, strange. Yeah, it was really an interesting time. I wouldn't do it today. I tell you, I was basically a spring, summer, fall, and stationary winter, and then probably May through September on the second one, so a little over a year. Yeah, that was a good time. It was a good time to do it. Things weren't very expensive, and it wasn't very hard getting around, knowing what to do, or getting directions or whatnot. Pick up enough of the languages on the way to get where you're going. The biggest hassle was in France because they were going from old francs to new francs. They were changing their monetary system around. So you had some of this, some of that, and how much is this is worth how much of that. But I would do it again, but not in today's climate. Oh, I missed that altogether, didn't I? Yes, we corresponded. When I was in Scotland, I stopped by Glasgow, where she lived, met her at her place. Actually, stayed the night. I understood her pretty well. The rest of the family, forget it. The Glasgow Scottish is very, very thick. Her mother wouldn't let her ride on the scooter, so we took a bus up to Braemar, which is the Scottish seat of the royal family, for the Braemar Games, the Highland Games. Watched them, came back. And at the second summer, the girl, the au pair that I met in London the first summer, I went up and visited her at her little town on the coast of Denmark. It was my first introduction to the Danish type open-faced sandwiches with things on it that I wasn't really interested in. It was a fun time, and then it broadened you out. You know, it was a good experience all around. Okay.
Yeah.